Tourism in Cuba is a hot topic that is inexplicably linked to the future of Cuba's geopolitical economy, society, and the future of its traditions and values. During our 10-day program in Cuba, we observed the face of what tourism in Cuba is today, as well as the implications of how tourism could possibly change tomorrow. We witnessed factors that drive tourism in Cuba, the policies that the government has implemented to increase traffic to its country, and the social disparities between the haves and have-nots. Through the observation of aspects like Cuba's dual economy and the segregation between tourists and locals, we found what this could all culminate into if the U.S.-Cuba embargo is lifted.
Cuba is a country that has it all: adventure, history, culture, architecture, art, and the general beauty of its lush, scenic nature. Many will say that travel to Havana, Cuba is like traveling back in time. With a large emphasis on its Spanish colonial architecture, it is a city by the sea, untouched by the capitalist corporations flourishing just 90 miles north of its shores. With music, dance, and 1950s Chevrolets abundant in its streets, tourists in Havana can observe an environment reminiscent of the 1950s mixed with an attitude of modernity. It is one of the last true socialist countries in the modern world, which also attracts tourism as people try to explore the true essence of reality in this highly romanticized country.
And then you have cities like Veradero. Veradero is a city in the province of Matanzas. It is a tourist town that boasts sandy white beaches, 5-star hotels, and commodities that are rare to find outside of the plush community. It is restricted to Cubans that live outside of the town in the sense that they might not be able to afford a vacation in this well-known tourist destination. The city of Veradero is plastered with billboards advertising for tourism. Billboards with signs reading Autentica Cuba. The advertisements promoting tourism in Cuba and Veradero are representations of Cuba as most tourists want to see it as. These advertisements dominantly feature people of white European origins, and through these advertisements you get a sense of the authentic Cuba that the government wants potential tourists to see.
Tourism in Cuba spurs a lot of industry jobs, like owning a restaurant, a souvenir shop, working as a taxi driver, or as a tour guide. One of the phenomenons that is occurring in Cuba concerns a substantial number of professionals, like doctors and lawyers, who are flocking to the tourist industry in order to cash in on hard currency like the euro and US or Canadian dollars. For example, Andrew and I stayed at a house that belonged to a man that works as one of Cuba's leading heart surgeons, and on the side he rents out rooms in his house to anyone who can afford to pay his price. And then there is our group coordinator, Sandor, who works professionally as a lawyer, but on the side, he works as a study abroad tour guide for the Martin Luther King Center. There's a myth floating around Cuba that professional jobs in Cuba are becoming less in number as a result of professionals working two sides of the economy. However, it's largely just that, a myth. The professional industry in Cuba is self-sustaining because the government enrolls the amount of college students it needs to fulfill each professional sector per year, and certain industries like the medical sector are actually growing, leading to an export of medical services around Latin America and the world abroad.
One of the largest aspects of Cuba that can change with the lift of the embargo and an increase in tourism is the Cuban revolutionary commitment. Cuban identity and nationality is now comprised of different cultures that characterize the general population. And rather than being a melting pot of multiple different cultures melting down to create an entirely new culture, Cuba is versatile in the sense that it is able to absorb new influences without the current culture becoming oversaturated. Whether the Cubans, and more specifically the Cuban youth, can maintain the Cuban culture without it becoming saturated by the influx of American consumerism is up to question.
During our program, we received a mixture of various opinions on the topic of revolutionary commitment. We met a large amount of individuals who believe that revolutionary values will stay in Cuba, regardless of how events change around the embargo. Other people, like the Cuban elders of the Psycho Ballet Project, think that the Cuban youth resemble the time more than the values of their parents, a testament to how easy it might be for the youth to embrace change. As globalization slowly grows in Cuba, will the country stay grounded in the revolutionary ideals that make Cuba unique? Or will they shift to a pattern of development primarily focused on the consumption of tourist dollars?